welcome to episode 13 of Lachie Does Footy. It's the second round of bye week. We're going to be looking at the round 12 review, the tips from after round 12, ladder after round 12, breakout players for the two teams that got the bye, the round 13 predictions, and for one big question, will Harry Mackay finally play against his brother? Port Adelaide versus Carlton at Adelaide Oval. It was close for the whole game. Port were winning at some stages, and then last quarter was all about Carlton. Sam Walsh played great game in the midfield. Tom De Koning was solid in the ruck. Nick Newman, another great game off half-back. Paddy Cripps played well again. Zach Williams, 3 goals in his new role up forward. Between Towers, 6 goals combined. Mitch Georgiadis kicked 4 goals, 1, and he's the only player to report for Port Adelaide. As for the teams, Carlton's season's starting to get back on track. As for Port, they need to beat the bigger teams at home. Collingwood versus Western Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium. Collingwood led for every quarter, except for the final quarter, which they let the Bulldogs win by 18 points. Marcus Bozzapelli had another great game in the midfield with 38 disposals. Barley Dale with another 35 disposals at half-back. It was a ruck battle between Darcy Cameron and Tim English of all proportions. 101 headouts combined. Lachie Schultz, 3 goals up forward for Collingwood. Nick Dacos, 2 goals up forward for Collingwood. As for the Bulldogs, Jack McRae looked better in his new role across half forward. Ugle Hagen with 2 goals. Sam Darcy with 3 goals, but he's got a suspension to deal with. Adam Treloar, 37 possessions and a goal against his old club. As for the Western Bulldogs, their year's getting back on track. As for Collingwood, their height's gone at full forward, and that's their first loss since the week I was in the Gold Coast. 4-4 versus Adelaide at the MCG. Hawks got up by 27 points. Matt Crouch played good in the midfield, and now he's out for the rest of the year with an injury. Dylan Moore kicked 5 goals and had 27 touches. Jack Gunston kicked 3 goals on game 250, with his old teammates from 10 years ago coming to cheer him on. Brayden Cook kicked 3 up forward for the Crows. Jack Jenovan kicked 2 free up forward for Hawthorn. If he kicked straight, he would have got 5. James Sicily's back to being like last year's James Sicily. As for Massimo D'Ambrosio, he's finally starting to hit good form at Hawthorn alongside Will Day. As for Hawthorn, they still got a late charge to make the finals. As for Adelaide, well, it's pretty much season done. Coast versus St Kilda at Optus Stadium. That game didn't matter much for the teams, but Saints got the win by 14 points. There were 9 lead changes. One of the big stories of the game was Mason Woods back in forward with 4 goals and 22 touches. He was one of their best players last year. Liam Ryan's back playing decent footy with 3 goals along with Jamie Cripps. Jack Darling, 2 goals for the Eagles. Max King, 2 goals for the Saints. As for Andrew Gaff, the return of the Gaff has got 21 touches. As for Jack Steele, he didn't get any stats in the first quarter, but he picked it up after the first quarter. As for the biggest story of the week is, well, no more rising star for Harley Reid. He's got a suspension to deal with. Geelong versus Richmond at GMHBA Stadium. It looked like it was going to be a terrible upset 1 minute. Richmond reserves were leading in the first half. And then Geelong pulled it back and kicked 8 goals in the second half to 10 goals to Richmond's 3. Ollie Dempsey, 3 goals and 27 touches. Well, maybe time to say goodbye to Tom Hawkins, but he's got 2 goals. As for Shannon Neal, he kicked 2 goals. Dustin Martin, 2 goals and 15 touches on game 299. Lee Fowles finally about to come good, and then bang, he goes down injured. Toby Nankervis, 51 touches in the ruck. Jack Bowers played another good game across half-back for the Cats, kicking 1 goal, 2. Mitch Duncan with a goal. Liam Baker kicked the goal in the midfield for Richmond. As for Geelong, we're nearly back on track, but they need to beat the good teams. As for Richmond, well, we know season's over, but they're showing promising signs. Melbourne versus Fremantle at TAO Traeger Park in Alice Springs. It was a weird blowout. Fremantle by 92 points. Jordan Clark and Luke Ryan played great games across halfback, both taking over 15 marks. Deadeye Jai's back kicking 4 goals. Luke Jackson, Josh Treacy and Michael Walters 3 goals each. As for Melbourne, I don't have anything much to say about the players. For Melbourne, well, their season's on the ropes. They've gone down to 10th. As for Fremantle, David King, if you're watching this, are Fremantle still boring? Gold Coast versus Essendon at People First Stadium. What a way to end the round. 20,000 people showed up to People First Stadium. It was a tough game all throughout, but Gold Coast got it done at the end by 11 points. The 2019 draft class trio played great again with fantasy scores in the hundreds again, and Took Miller played another great game. The two beds up forward kicked 8 goals combined, King and Long. Nick Cox 3 goals up forward for Essendon. Jack Lachie 2 goals up forward for the Gold Coast. As for the teams, as for Zach Merritt, he's inaccurate, 33 touches for Essendon. Anyway, back to the teams. As for the Gold Coast, they're starting to look dangerous. As for Essendon, they need to start beating the mid-table teams and get wins in Queensland. Now we're on to the tipping. Port Adelaide and Carlton, I picked the Blues, they got it done. I picked Collingwood to beat the Bulldogs, but Bulldogs got it done. I picked Adelaide over Hawthorn, but Hawthorn got the win. I picked West Coast over St Kilda, but St Kilda got it done. Geelong and Richmond, I picked the Cats, they got the win. Melbourne and Fremantle, I embarrassingly picked Melbourne, but Freo won in a blowout. Gold Coast and Essendon, I picked the Bombers, but Gold Coast did it. As for the scores for the week, I got 2 out of 7 for the week. For the season, it's 59 out of 106. As for the tipping week, it was a bad week for tipping, although after a good one last one. Now we are moving on to the ladder. First spot. It's still first spot after a week's rest. It's the Sydney Swans, and they have beaten the bye last week. Second, we got Essendon. Now they're still second, but they're looking a bit shaky with their loss to the Gold Coast. Geelong, they're back up to third after losing four straight games. Port Adelaide are in fourth on the ladder. They need to start beating the bigger teams at home, and this week they got the bye. Fifth on the ladder, we got Carlton. They won 2 games in a row. Sixth on the ladder, we got Fremantle. They're climbing back up, and they got the bye next week. Seventh, we got GWS Giants. They came off their win over the bye last week, but they have to go to Tassie to meet Hawthorn. Eighth, we got Gold Coast. Welcome back to the top 8, Gold Coast. Ninth on the ladder, we got Collingwood. They have dropped back down the ladder after their loss to the Bulldogs. 10th, we got Melbourne. There's been some big issues for Melbourne. They just put their bus back on park. 11th, we got the Western Bulldogs. They're slowly climbing. They're still in 11th after their win over Collingwood. 12th, we got Hawthorn. They're moving back up a bit. And they've moved their bus from park to drive after for the last 5 weeks. 13th, we got the Brisbane Lions. Well, they came off their bye last week. 14th, we got Adelaide. Well, they need to make some changes quick, smart, or it's season over. 15th, we got St Kilda. They've got the win, which didn't really matter. 16th, we got West Coast. Bad news, no Harley Reid. 17th, we got Richmond. They may as well get some more draft picks and lose Liam Baker and Shea Bolton to Fremantle. 18th, we got North Melbourne. Well, we've got nothing much to report. Now we move on to the breakout players of the team that's got the bye. Matthew Johnson, his disposals have gone up by 2.8. His marks have gone up by 0.7. Tackles up by 0.2. His efficiency's got down from 80% to 78%. Clearances have gone down from 1.8 to 1.7. Goals, he's kicked 3 goals this year compared to 4 last year. Scoring accuracy gone from 44% to 33%. He's had a bit of just a slightly improved year, but not actually a breakout player year. The Fremantle actual breakout player is Jeremy Sharp. For Port Adelaide, my breakout player I picked at the start of the season was Lachie Jones. He's been getting more of the ball. His disposals went up to 0.7, marks up to 0.3, tackles 0.4. His efficiency's gone down from 79 to 75%. His defensive stats have gone down a bit. His 1%ers have gone from 4.3 to just 3. Spoils have gone from 3.7 to 2.3. His intercepts have gone up to 1.1 compared to 0.9 last year. He needs some work to do, but he's not the breakout player at the moment. The actual breakout player is Jace Burgoyne. Now we are up to the round 13 predictions. First up, we got Adelaide and Richmond at Adelaide Oval. I picked the Crows by 18 points. Best players for the Crows, I'm going with Jordan Dawson, Josh Rochelle, and Ben Keys. Richmond, I'm going with the return of Tim Taranto, the return of Shea Bolton, and the return of Dion Prestia. This game doesn't mean much for the Tigers because their season's already over. As for the Crows, this is their last chance to push for the finals. Western Bulldogs versus Brisbane at Marvel Stadium. Well, for the last 20 years, the Western Bulldogs got a very good record at home against Brisbane. As for the result, I'm picking, because it's football heritage, I'm going to Western Bulldogs by 32 points. Best players for the Bulldogs, I'm going with Marcus Bontempelli, Bailey Dale, and Jamara Ugle-Hagan up forward. Brisbane Lions, I'm going with Lachie Neale, Kyle Lohmann, and Harris Andrews down back. It should be a good win for the Bulldogs to climb up the ladder. As for Brisbane, well, like the Crows, it's also their last chance to make the finals. Hawthorn versus GWS at UTAS Stadium in Launceston. I'm going with an upset for this match. I got Hawthorn by 20 points. Best players for Hawthorn, I'm going with Jai Newcomb, Will Day, and Dylan Moore. GWS, I'm going with Tom Green, Jesse Hogan, and Lachie Whitfield. For Hawthorn, they need to win this game to stay in finals contention. As for GWS, they need to win this game to stay in premiership contention. West Coast versus North Melbourne at Optus Stadium. Bottom of the table clash. This game doesn't really mean much to both teams. That's why I got West Coast winning by 24 points. Best players for West Coast, I'm going with Jake Waterman, Andrew Gaff, and Liam Duggan. North Melbourne, I'm going with Luke Davies-Uniacke and Harry Sheasel. Let's see if North Melbourne could actually pick up some form after the bye week. St Kilda versus Gold Coast at Marvel Stadium. Well, pretty much season done for the Saints. As for the Saints, they're not hitting some good form at the moment. And I'd still like to apologise for picking you to finish 4th early in the season. As for the game itself, I'm going with the Gold Coast by 24 points. Best players for the Gold Coast, 2019 draft class trio, Ben King, Took Miller. St Kilda, I'm going with Ryan Marshall in the ruck. As for the Gold Coast Suns, they need to win this game to stay in touch with the 8. As for St Kilda, well, they got some huge problems in there, and they need to show some heart. Sydney versus Geelong at the SCG. In this game, Geelong, they're not looking like a third-place team right now. As for the Swans, they are the team to beat so far this season. Geelong will need to win this game to keep in touch with the top 4. As for the Swans, they're still moving very well, playing good footy. As for the game itself, I got Sydney winning by 26 points. Best players for the Swans, I'm going with Isaac Heaney, Errol Gordon, and Brodie Grundy. Geelong's best players, I got Max Holmes and the 2 Ollies, Dempsey and Henry. Sunday night football, the real blockbuster. Essendon Carlton at the MCG. Let's see if the Bombers can continue their good form, even though they've been scraping in wins against the smaller teams, but they need to hit some form against the good teams. As for Carlton, they've been hitting some good form against the good teams. Like against GWS in round 6 and Port Adelaide last week. So for this game, I'm going with Carlton by 1 point. Best players for Carlton, I'm going with Paddy Cripps, Sam Walsh, Charlie Curnow, and Harry Mackay, both up forward. As for Essendon, I'm going with Ben Mackay. It would be interesting to see if they can finally line up against each other. We also got Nick Martin and Zach Merritt on the best players list. Now we move on to King's Birthday Monday, the big freeze game between Collingwood and Melbourne. Make sure you buy a beanie and donate for Vitamin D. For the game itself, I'm going with Collingwood by 12 points. Best players for Collingwood, I'm going with the Dacos brothers and Bo McCreary. Melbourne, I'm going with Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, and Max Gawn. Collingwood should be able to have the few players back by then. Melbourne, however, let's see if they can bounce back after an embarrassing loss to Fremantle, but I reckon Collingwood will be too strong. That's it for episode 13 of Lachie Does Footy. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you all next week for episode 14.